Hello fellow YouTubers, this is DVD Collector 1986 here with another video. This is going to be basically my thoughts on the latest in the David Gordon Green Halloween trilogy. The last movie in the trilogy, Halloween Ends. And I'm going to give you my thoughts and I'm going to kind of talk about the other movies in the trilogy, as well as the franchise as a whole in general, and just kind of give you my thoughts on the whole thing. First and foremost, I am an old school Halloween fan. I'll tell you right out the gate, I do not think that the first Halloween from 1978 is the best thing since sliced bread. I appreciate that movie. I love it. I can watch it over and over. It never gets old. However, that said, I don't consider it the end-all, be-all of slashers like a lot of people do. My introduction to the Halloween franchise was Halloween 4, and to me, Halloween 4 was the greatest of the Halloween movies. It was the best sequel, and I'm going to say it. I think it was better than the first Halloween. John Carpenter started this franchise, but I think Halloween 4 was really where this franchise peaked, and I still to this day consider Halloween 4 the greatest Halloween movie in the franchise. I'm also a big fan of the Thorn trilogy. I know there's some weird stuff in it. Some people hate the Thorn trilogy. Some people don't like that they try to give Michael Myers an explanation. Albeit it could have been a better explanation, but at least they tried. And after all the weird stuff that was introduced in Halloween 5, they had to actually approach a fan, Daniel Farrens, to write the script for 6. And I think Halloween 6 deserves a lot more credit than it gets generally, because as weird as that movie is, Daniel Farrens approached it and tried to explain and tie together all the loose ends left over from previous sequels, mostly Part 5, the Man in Black, the thorn symbol on Michael's wrist, and just and a lot of other things. And I was always fascinated by the Thorn trilogy, and I'm going to say it right here and now. Dr. Loomis was the key central focal point of the franchise to me. Growing up, when I was a kid, and I got introduced to the Halloween franchise via Halloween 4, the only Halloween movies that existed at the time when I was introduced to the Halloween franchise was Halloween 1 through 5. 6 did not exist. There was no H2O, there was no Resurrection, there were no Rob Zombie Halloween movies, and there was no David Gordon Green trilogy. With the exception of 3, my version of Halloween had Michael Myers and Dr. Loomis in it. Just know that going into this. I have a lot of problems with this trilogy. I love Halloween 2018. I think it's one of the better sequels to come out in a good long while. I still have some problems with it. One, at the beginning, when the podcasters are, when they approach Michael in the sanitarium at the beginning of the movie, before the opening credits, one of the podcasters holds up the mask and he says, he's trying to get a reaction out of Michael. And he starts yelling at Michael, say something. And then they cut to credits. I didn't like that because I thought realistically, if if anybody went into a mental asylum or institution, any place like that where there's like mentally unstable patients, and they started screaming at the top of their lungs to get a reaction out of a particular person or patient, they wouldn't be allowed to do that because it would rile up the other patients. So I had a problem from the get-go with how they started it off. The second thing that I did not like is Dr. Sartain. I Did not like this character whatsoever. I see what they were going for across all three of these movies. But what they did was they threw one too many curveballs into the mix. There's even a line where Jamie Lee Curtis says to Dr. Sartain at one point, "Oh, you're the new Loomis." No, he's not. Ever since the end of Halloween 6, Donald Pleasence died in real life. And ever since then, every sequel or chain of sequels in this franchise has been an alternate timeline, and they always bypass the Dr. Loomis thing completely, and he hasn't been in the franchise much at all, except for the Rob Zombie remakes, which I don't really like those. Every single reboot or alternate timeline sequel ever since 6 has had Jamie Lee Curtis in it and the whole Laurie Strode thing. I'm tired of Laurie Strode. There's like 3 or 4 different timelines with her. I never saw her as the protagonist in these films ever. Dr. Loomis was the protagonist, and that is my biggest problem with this franchise, is that ever since Donald Pleasence's death, they have yet to, with the exception of the Rob Zombie films, they did not ever bring back the Loomis character. They never did an alternate timeline where they recast him with somebody else. And I've heard people constantly saying, well, nobody should ever play Dr. Loomis except Donald Pleasence. Nobody can ever play that character again. That character and his legacy rests with Donald Pleasence, and nobody should ever touch that role ever again. Dr. Loomis's pursuit of Michael Myers was what made the old sequels so good. To say that nobody else should ever play Loomis ever again, what if somebody said that about Christopher Reeve and Superman? If they did that, if they believed that and stuck to that, there's no way we would have gotten the Man of Steel remakes that had Henry Cavill playing Superman. And arguably, Henry Cavill did an amazing job. So I apply the same logic to the Dr. Loomis character. For years, people have been saying, oh, the series, the Halloween franchise just isn't the same anymore. Something's missing. Just no matter how many alternate timelines or different stories they try to come up with, something is missing. And I'm one of those people. I enjoy some things about the newer movies. However, there is something missing. And since no one else is going to say it, I'm going to say it. And that's the thing that's missing is Dr. Loomis. You cannot do a Halloween movie, or rather, you can do a Halloween movie without Loomis. But if you want a Halloween movie that feels close in DNA to the original formula of these films, you have to have Dr. Loomis. Literally, you have to start a new timeline. You have to reboot the franchise. And you have to have a Dr. Loomis character. And that means someone else is going to have to play Dr. Loomis, other than Donald Pleasence, obviously. And I guarantee you there's at least one person out there, or several, that can do it. If Henry Cavill can do as good a Superman as he did, somebody out there can play a good Loomis. What they should have done from the very beginning, I don't like H2O, I don't like Resurrection, I don't like the Rob Zombie remakes. If they had just reboot the franchise and started anew after 6 and just said, we're going to go back to the beginning, we're going to start the franchise anew, and had just recast every character, or at least brought back Loomis and Michael Myers and no Laurie Strode, and had everybody else be a new character and just started there, I think that this franchise would have done much better up to this point. This series has been a mess ever since Part 6 was over. Other than Dr. Sartain and the opening sequence, the only other thing I didn't like about Halloween 2018, and this also applies to the entire trilogy, was all the comedy that was in it. I did not like the character of Ray. Other than those things, I rather liked Halloween 2018 quite a bit. Then you get to Halloween Kills, which is the second movie. I really like Halloween Kills, not as much as 2018, but it's a very, very close, almost a tie. And I like the viciousness of Michael. However, some things about this movie I didn't like. I did not like the dialogue. Some of the dialogue in Halloween Kills was atrocious. The whole evil dies tonight thing was way overdone. I did not like the side plot with the other mental patient, the one that they think is Michael Myers but isn't. I know people have defended this and said, well, in this timeline, all the other sequels don't exist. So in this timeline, the citizens of Haddonfield would have no idea what Michael looks like because the only movie that exists prior to this trilogy would be the first one, and Michael, they retconned it that Michael was captured at the end of the first movie, so nobody in the town would know what Michael would look like 40 years later, and I get that. But still, people like me, there's tons of people out there that have been watching this franchise for years and years and years before those movies ever existed. So whether it's an alternate timeline or not, and however you try to justify it, some short Danny DeVito looking guy is not Michael Myers, and they spent a little too much time with that side plot. Some of the character decisions, just some of the things that the characters do in Halloween Kills was just stupid. The other thing I didn't like about Halloween Kills is that they killed off all the legacy characters. Brackett, Nurse Marion, Tommy Doyle, and Lonnie, all the legacy characters. They killed them all off, with the exception of the character Lindsay, played by Kyle Richards. That's just dumb. Those characters deserved better than that in my book. The other thing I didn't like is the social commentary. They tried to shoehorn social commentary into pretty much all of these movies. The social commentary really kicked into gear with the second movie. Don't put that stuff in my movies. When people go to horror films, especially, well, they do this with all genre of films, but especially horror films. When people go to see a horror film, they go there to turn their brain off and just have a good time for 90 minutes or a couple hours, however long the movie is. When people go to see horror films, they don't want to be preached to, and they don't want social commentary or some sort of agenda in their films. They just don't want it. When you get to the third movie, there was social commentary in that movie as well. Some stuff I really, really liked about Halloween Kills, again, how vicious Michael was. I liked the setup with, they kept talking about, why does Michael always stare out his window? Does he see something out the window? Is he looking at his own reflection? They were teeter-tottering with the idea of providing a possible explanation for why Michael is the way he is. And whether you want an explanation or not, I thought that stuff was really interesting. And they were really setting that up. And then Hawkins, his character, I really liked the setup with him. I really liked him in 2018. And then in this movie, they set it up that he was the one in the second movie. He was the one that said, you know, I'm the one that's going to get him, meaning he's going to go after Michael. And they were, you know, Hawkins was sort of the central point of the second movie. And they were setting up the whole thing about Michael looking out the window. Why does he do that? And then they were also setting up the fact that Michael was straight up supernatural in the second movie. I don't care what anybody says, he was supernatural. There's no way he could have done all that stuff in the second movie of the trilogy without being supernatural. So he was supernatural as far as I'm concerned. And I like that because I'm a fan of the Thorn trilogy, and the Donald Pleasence sequels from back in the day, Michael was supernatural, especially in 4. I like that. So they were setting that up. And after the beating that he took at the end of the second movie, he has to be supernatural. Now, moving on to the third movie, I really enjoyed it. But I did have some problems with it. I didn't like it that Michael wasn't really in the movie. I wanted Michael in it more. I didn't like that they focused on the Corey character so much. And I thought the ending was a bit lackluster. It felt a bit rushed. It felt tacked on. It was like they made this movie mostly about Corey, and then at the end, the makers of the movie were like, "Oh yeah," it's like when they were editing it, it's almost like they were like, "Whoa, oh yeah, we forgot this is supposed to be the end of this new Michael Myers Halloween trilogy, so we had to tack on this ending, a showdown between Michael Myers and Laurie Strode." So that ending felt kind of tacked on. Now, do I have a problem with the fact that they threw Michael into a grinder? No. This is the end of this trilogy. And I'll tell you right now, anybody out there that says this is the end of this franchise, they're never going to... No. They're going to reboot it in a few years, and they're going to probably start with a new timeline, or they're going to start all the way from scratch and just start the franchise anew. Now, I don't have a problem with how they ended it. I just wish that the fight had been better and longer between Michael and Laurie. I wish that they had that fight scene had gone on for at least another 10 minutes, and I wish that they had Michael in the movie for at least another 10, 15 extra minutes at runtime. If they had done that and kept everything else the same, I think this movie would have been better received. And I respect the fact that they did try something new. David Gordon Green Company, they took a few swings. They wanted to put something new into the franchise, try something a little different, because this was the 13th film, after all, in the franchise. But all in all, I'm sorry, but they swung and they missed as far as I'm concerned. Nobody but Michael should be wearing Michael's mask. Michael is the main character. This is the last movie in a trilogy. Michael should be the main character. He should never be a back character or a secondary or side character. I admire what they were trying to do. I see what they were going for, but it just didn't quite land for me. Now, that said, I still enjoyed this movie. I'm going to tell you right now, I've watched this movie 4 times to really let it settle, to figure out exactly where I fall with this movie, and I would rate this movie a solid 6 out of 10. I liked it, but there was a lot of problems I had with it. Is it a perfect trilogy? No. My main problems with it, like I said, are that Michael isn't in it enough. He should have been the focal point of the movie, and the fight scene at the end should have been longer. As a fan of this franchise, what I would have done is I would have had Michael in the movie more, obviously, and then I would have, at the end, you could have kept everything else the same, and then at the end, what I would have done was I would have had the fight be longer, and then I would have had Laurie Strode, Allison, and Hawkins take on Michael, and at the end I would have had Hawkins be the one to take Michael out. I would have had him say something like, "This is for Dr. Loomis." And if not that, here's another alternate ending I would have done. I would have had it where everything goes just like it did in the movie, but at the end, they come back to Laurie's house or something, and they figure out that Corey is gone. Somehow Corey survived, and he took Michael Myers' mask, and he's gone. He got up and he left. And then, in addition to that, I would have had it where Michael actually and Laurie both get taken out at the end, and Corey gets away somehow, and that Hawkins... Now, hear me out. And then I would have it where Hawkins would see that Corey got away, and that Corey is going to be the new Michael Myers, and that Hawkins would swear that he would pursue and hunt down Corey no matter what. And then, of course, that would mean more sequels. But if you weren't going to end it and you wanted to keep it going, that's how you return to the old formula. of the villain having a pursuer. If anybody in the new trilogy had more of a reason to take Michael out, it was Hawkins, not Laurie Strode. And again, this is some of the problems I had with the new movie. I don't like having a copycat in Halloween Ends. Let it be Michael or don't do the movie. Something else I didn't like was what I mentioned about the second movie in the trilogy. They set up this whole thing with Hawkins that, he said, I'm going to be the one that's going to get him. He had unfinished business. That went nowhere in Halloween Ends. Hawkins was basically wasted, and his character was wasted in this movie. Another character that was wasted was Kyle Richards' character, Lindsay. She barely had any screen time in this movie. That her character's story went absolutely nowhere. And I just think this movie, for the stuff that I did like about it, I still feel that this movie was a missed opportunity, and especially because it was the end of a trilogy. They could have done better. I don't understand why it is so hard for the people who make these movies to get it right. I don't understand. They have made so many, throughout the entire franchise, so many mistakes have been made. Halloween 3, love it or hate it, it was a mistake. I don't care if it shares the Halloween name or not. That movie has nothing to do with the original storyline. And if the movie is called Halloween and it's part of the Halloween franchise, it's only a Halloween movie if Michael Myers is in it. If there's no Michael Myers and you're trying to do the anthology thing, that's not a Halloween movie. And I know a lot of people want the franchise to return to the whole anthology thing that was introduced with 3. I don't want that. If you want a horror anthology, there's plenty to choose from. There's Creepshow, there's Tales from the Crypt, there's even a Creepshow series. There's VHS. There's a ton of horror anthology movies and shows out there. So if you turned Halloween, the franchise, into an anthology, it would lose its uniqueness because it would become just like every other anthology. I don't want that. That was a mistake, but luckily they course corrected with Halloween 4. That's why I love Halloween 4. And then the only thing with 4 that I didn't like was what they did with Jamie at the end, that cliffhanger ending. As good as shocking an ending as that was, we didn't want any other villain in the franchise other than Michael. We didn't want a Jamie being the villain. We didn't want anybody else. So as much problems as people have with Halloween 5, at least they course corrected from the ending of 4 and brought back Michael as the villain. And all due respect to the screenwriter or scriptwriter for Halloween 4, but he said he was disappointed with the direction they went with Part 5 because he wanted Jamie to become the new villain and to go from there. No, that would have been a huge mistake. Whether you like Halloween 5 or not, at least they brought back Michael. So that was another mistake. And as much as some people hate the Thorn trilogy, at least 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6 were one linear story. If you watch them in order and skip 3, of course, they're the last of the linear original story. Everybody says that H2O and Resurrection are part of the OG timeline. No, they're not, because H2O, after 6, that's when all the alternate timeline stuff started and the retconning of other sequels. So to me, the original timeline is 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. And those are the only movies that I really, really care about in the franchise. I like the new trilogy, but if I'm pushed into a corner, just give me the first 6 movies and leave out Part 3 and just give me those 5 movies and I'm happy. And the thing about those 5 movies is they all had Donald Pleasence in them. So I don't care what anybody says. Dr. Loomis was the protagonist in these films. He was the arch nemesis of Michael, and you can make a Halloween movie without Loomis, but doing that is like making a Dracula movie without Van Helsing. It works, but it doesn't work. And I want a true return to form. I hope that the next Halloween movie is a reboot of the entire franchise. I don't want a Laurie Strode anymore. You can do all new characters, but bring back Loomis and bring back Michael Myers, and then you can do whatever story you want. Just make every movie. You could do 4 or 5 movies and just make every movie about Loomis and his pursuit of Michael. They got that balance right in the 4th movie, and if every single movie in the franchise had been like how they did it in 4, it would have been awesome. But unfortunately, they didn't do that. People always step into this franchise when they make new sequels, and they try to get real ambitious with it, and they throw everything in the kitchen sink into it, and it never works. And the reason why is because the Halloween movies work best when they're simple. The first movie is not my favorite. 4 is my favorite. However, I'll give the first movie this. What makes the first movie work is how simple it is. Stop throwing everything in the kitchen sink in these movies. They threw one too many curveballs in there. They put too much comedy, and they threw way too many things into the mix, and it made the movie complicated and convoluted. And as good as the trilogy was, it had a lot of problems for that reason, and that's because Halloween works best when it's simple. To me, as much as I enjoyed some stuff about the trilogy, nothing will ever top Halloween 4. 2 things I want to mention about Loomis as far as this new trilogy. I love the flashback in the second movie. The guy that they had play Loomis in the flashback, that was awesome. I think Donald Pleasence would have really appreciated that. However, that said, the biggest sin that this trilogy committed to me was it ignored every single movie after the first, which means all of the movies that Donald Pleasence did are no longer canon, according to this new trilogy. Of course, those movies still exist. You can still go watch them. But as far as the timeline of this new trilogy, all the Dr. Loomis, Donald Pleasence films do not exist in this trilogy. And I'm sorry, but that's just another smack in the face to Donald Pleasence to me, because this man poured his heart and his soul into that role, and to just sweep his sequels under the rug like that, huge mistake. The other complaint I have is that they basically none of the movies in the new trilogy, at the end when the credits roll, not one single movie in this trilogy says "in memory of Donald Pleasence" at all. Not even the second movie, which had Dr. Loomis played by somebody else in the flashback. That relates to my biggest problem. Is I told you earlier, Donald Pleasence, Dr. Loomis, is the protagonist of these films, no matter what. Until they return to that formula, they're always going to have problems with this franchise moving forward. This franchise has limped onward ever since Part 6, with the loss of Donald Pleasence. This franchise has never been the same. I feel like with all of the alternate timeline sequels, H2O, Resurrection, the David Gordon Green trilogy, all they do in these movies is bring back Jamie Lee Curtis's character. They completely just, it's like they forgot about Dr. Loomis. Yeah, they mention him a few times in the movie, but really, this character and the man who played him, he never got the credit he deserved for playing that role, and he was such a pivotal part, such a huge part of those movies, that a character and an actor like that does not deserve to be swept under the rug. And this man has been dead for 27 years, and it just seems like everybody forgot about him. It sounds like I'm just dogging this trilogy. I enjoyed the trilogy. I respect that David Gordon Green Company tried some new things. They took a few swings. However, I feel like they got a little too ambitious. They threw in a few too many things. Halloween Ends is the perfect example of what happens when you let 4 people write a script for a movie. Too many cooks in the kitchen. I give Halloween Ends 6 out of 10. I would give Halloween Kills 8 out of 10, and then I would give Halloween 2018 an 8.5 out of 10. And I hope someday that the franchise really does return to its original form. This was a long video. If you stayed to the end, I appreciate it. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and hearing my thoughts on this, and I hope that a lot of you watching this agree with me. I know there's a lot of fans of this franchise out there like me. We miss Dr. Loomis. We really do. But thank you for watching, and I will catch you guys on the next video.